Ladies, my name is Leslie Whitty. I'm the Vice President of Outreach and Communication for the South Central Workforce Development Board, and I am extremely excited that you've decided to join me for the next 15-20 minutes or so for this women's work session. And today's session is all about the face, how important the face is, especially in nonverbal communication as it relates to the workforce. And as always, I would like to start with a quote. And this quote, it was surprising to me. It's actually from a gentleman who lived in the 1600s, but I think the quote is definitely timeless. And it says, "It's the common wonder of all men, how among so many million faces there should be none alike." And today is all about how unique the face is and also how important it is. It really is mind-blowing once you get into it. So the name of today's session is Face the Facts, more than just makeup. And again, it's all about your face. So to begin with, the focus on nonverbal communication, I cannot overly emphasize the importance. According to some studies, nonverbal communication is close to 100% of how we perceive information. Now, if you look at the screen, you'll see three numbers here: 55, 38, and 7. And those numbers stem from a study. It was back in the late 60s by a gentleman with the last name Moravian. And he did tremendous work in the field of communication, particularly nonverbal. And his study said that in any interaction where we are able to take away meaning from that interaction, 55% of our interpretation comes from visual elements, what we see. 38% of what we perceive comes from vocal elements, such as the tone of voice, pitch, volume, and only 7% of our perceived meaning, our interpretation, comes from the words themselves. So that's the 55-38-7 theory. You may or may not agree with those numbers. I would say, personally, I believe a safe estimate is around 90% of our interpretation of any interaction comes from nonverbal communication. And the example that I frequently give is if someone says, hey, Leslie, how's it going? And my response is, oh, just great. Would you interpret that as, oh, she said things are going great, she must be having a fantastic day? Or would you be reading between the lines and picking up on the sarcasm in my voice, the tone of voice, the pitch, all of those different things? Obviously, if someone gave you a response like that, their day probably is not going too great at all. So nonverbal communication is extremely important. Whether you agree on the percentages or not, I think we can all agree that nonverbal is tremendous as far as its importance in the workplace and in life in general. And when it comes to nonverbal communication, the face is where we look first when it comes to nonverbal communication and how we perceive a person or a situation. That's where we look first, and that's where we look most frequently. We look at people's faces. We're drawn to human faces. Babies are drawn to the human face. They will, especially the eyes. You've probably heard the saying, the eyes are the window to the soul. And there really is a lot of truth to that. The eye is the only part of the body that you cannot physically control. And what I mean by that is if I said, hey, I'll give you $100 if you can make your eyes dilate right now, unless you went into a dark room and came back out. We can't will our pupils to constrict or dilate. And that's where that phrase comes from. So the human face is extremely important when it comes to nonverbal communication. And for those of you who have registered for the webinar, I am putting up a poll right now. Do you agree that about 90% of our interpretation comes from nonverbal communication? And so that has been posted. Again, if you have registered for the webinar, that will be in the polls tab. If you have not registered for the webinar and you're watching a video, you won't have the option to respond, but you can always register for future webinars or go back and register for this one. This is just a feature of the webinar platform itself. And I'm just curious, do you think nonverbal communication is that important? Is it such a big deal that the majority of our communication interpretation comes from nonverbal? So if you would respond to that, I'm interested to see what the responses are. So we're talking about the face. You can look at the slides here and you can see the obvious emotions. And these are all stock photos, photos that are royalty free. I don't know these people. These are fair use photos. It was very challenging finding photos that I believe portrayed genuine emotion. And these are some of the best ones I found. I think the majority of these are pretty genuine. You see happiness, you see anger, you see boredom, you see frustration, you see surprise. The face really is revealing. And when it comes to women in the workplace or returning to the workplace, the next thing I like to talk about with the face is the whole idea of makeup. And makeup is extremely interesting. According to multiple researchers, makeup can be associated with confidence. And it's extremely interesting to me that both no makeup, as in zero makeup at all, and too much makeup are both associated with a lack of confidence. So I have submitted my own face here. That shows how important these sessions are to me, that I'm throwing my face out there without makeup for everyone to see. So if you look in the photo, you can see the one photo has me completely without makeup. Then the photo on the bottom right is myself with a lot of makeup on. And I did these through an app. I didn't really do all this to my face. Then the one in the middle has a medium amount of makeup, sort of in the middle. Think about three little bears, too hot, too cold, just right. That's what you want to strive for when it comes to makeup. And if you look at these bottom pictures and you think about the research that tells us too much and too little makeup are both associated with a lack of confidence. I'm not saying that is true. I'm not saying that is 100% the case every single time. But you need to be aware that's what people perceive. So I would recommend in the workplace, in an interview, wearing, sort of in the middle, a little bit of makeup, enough but not too much. Again, this is not saying one thing is right or wrong. It is helping you become aware of what others' perceptions of makeup might be. I would be thrilled to get questions. Even if, again, you would have to be registered through the webinar platform for the questions, but I can get questions pretty much at any time. So if you have thoughts about this, if you are interested in these concepts, I would absolutely love to hear from you. I think these are interesting and important discussions to have. So feel free to, in the chat or Q&A section of the webinar platform, submit those. You can also send me an email, and I'm going to share that email address with you next. For the rest of the day, I would like you to really focus on faces. If you're looking at others in the workplace, if you're participating in online meetings, if you're going through social media, look at others' faces. You will be able to really pick up on their emotion, probably what they're thinking, if you really focus on the face. It's extremely important. I'll probably end up doing at least one, maybe two more sessions about the face or nonverbal communication, because there is so much to it. Again, we're scratching the surface here. What's next? Complete the challenge. Try to really focus on the face today. You can, if you're watching the video, you can register for a webinar. That way I can let you know, hey, a webinar is coming up, whatever day and time the next one would be. Or you can email me directly and let me know your thoughts, let me know your questions, and I would ask you to tell others about this series. This is a grassroots effort. We're just getting started in the world of webinars, and the more people who know about these sessions, the better. I hope there's a little tidbit that you might find helpful. And finally, you can follow us on social media at SCKYWDB. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're also on LinkedIn. But those are some things you can do immediately. We are coming up at the 14-minute mark, so I do not want to overstay my welcome. But I do want to let you know that I'm extremely, extremely happy that you've decided to spend a little bit of time today. Hopefully you've got some thoughts about the face. If you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out. Again, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.